Have you ever felt like a second-rate Christian before? Okay, let me give a little bit of context. My name is Christy, and me and my husband attend the Bayside Granite Bay campus. And I've actually attended the Bayside Granite Bay campus my whole life. My dad started this church. My entire family works at the church, except for me. All growing up, I always had this interest in business and entrepreneurship, and I always had desires of things that were happening outside of the church. And yet I loved God. And I was so at war with myself between these two things because I always thought, man, if I go into business, does that make me a second-rate Christian? Does that make my only use to God and the church and all of these things giving money? Like, is that it? And so I remember feeling like, I'm so at war with myself in this, that back when I graduated college, I actually started working for another ministry in the state. And I remember going into that ministry being like, okay, this is gonna be it. Like, this is gonna be my calling, and I'm gonna jump into this. And I remember it felt like the entire time I was pushing a rock uphill. I went from that to then working for a nonprofit, which kind of felt a little more businessy. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be the thing. This is gonna be the calling. And I remember, again, it felt like pushing a rock uphill. And I remember when I was working for that nonprofit, it's very non-profitable. And so I ended up starting this little side business that I was like, I'll just do it on the side to make some extra money. And that business actually started flourishing. Like, it started thriving. It grew super fast. Instead of pushing a rock uphill, it felt like I was pushing a snowball down a hill, and it was just working and it was clicking and I was loving what I was doing. And yet I was feeling guilty. I was like, wait, I'm supposed to be in ministry. I'm supposed to be in church ministry because I love God. I don't want my life to be purposeless. And yet I was so confused, and I was like, what do I do? And I remember I hit a breaking point. I was on a job in Santa Barbara, and ended up going to this little church. And I remember sitting there and I was praying, and I was like, God, I will go into full-time ministry if you want me to. I will give up this business if you ask it. And I remember he actually reversed the roles on me. He was like, hey, I don't want you to give up your business. I want you to go into business. I want you to do this and do it for me. And I remember feeling like this weight lifted off my shoulders of, oh my gosh, God's giving me permission to go into business, into this secular marketplace world, and actually utilize the gifts he's given me and do that really, really well. And I remember being so excited about that. I remember growing my business, giving money, doing all these awesome things, and feeling like, wow, like I'm able to give money and give it back, and I have permission from God to do this. And then I actually learned he not only wants me to give off of what I'm making in my business and off the success that he's giving me, but he actually wants to use my business. He wants to use the thing that I'm doing outside of the church for his ministry, for his kingdom work. And I remember this shift in my head of going, oh my gosh, it's not just giving money, even though that's one of my favorite things about owning a business is giving money away. But it also is about, man, my business itself, the clients I have, the people I work with, that itself is a ministry. I think sometimes we separate church and state in our head. I know I used to do that. We separate, here's my church side, here's my ministry side. This is when I'm at small group, when I'm at church. And then there's the business side. That's when I'm at work, I'm just doing that, I'm getting through it so that I can then give things to this other side, give some extra time to serve, give some money, all of that kind of stuff, which is all good things and all things I love to do. But I started opening up, as soon as I opened up the door to God having access to my business and going, you know what, there actually isn't a separation. There's just one thing, and that is my life, whether I'm at my business, I'm working in my business, or I'm at church. It's the same thing. It's all spiritual, and it's all, if you let God have access to both, he will show himself in such crazy ways that it's absolutely unbelievable. And so I remember one of the pinnacles of me realizing this is that I was hired to do a shoot down in Nicaragua, which was a huge thing for my business. I was so excited about it. I ended up taking a bunch of my friends down to Nicaragua with me to do this shoot, and we actually ended up raising money to drill a well through my business while we were down there. And I was like, man, my life feels so much more aligned now that I'm mixing in relationships, I'm mixing in giving, I'm mixing in the stuff I'm doing in my business. And it was so cool to watch how aligned I felt compared to when I used to separate everything. And God works so much more when we align ourselves to him and we go, you can have every aspect of my life. You don't just have the church, you don't just have the small group side of my life. You get access to my business, my daily, whether I'm at going to work, whether I'm on a job or whatever it is, he's got access to all of it. And it just makes life so much more exciting and fulfilling to be able to give all of that to him. And so whether you are someone who's an employee, whether you have your own business, wherever you work, know that if you open up the doors for God and say, hey, use this area for your work, He will do it, and he will show up, and he will give you the words, and he will give you the love that you can show those people in order to make an impact in this world. And so I hope this encourages you today, and thanks for listening.